All right, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, gentlemen, welcome to our meeting. I'm looking for an approval of tonight's agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Tonight I saw we have no comments from the public, and so we'll move on to board business. Is there any board business we want to discuss tonight? Superintendent comments.
We'll start with just a quick report here tonight. We are working through legislative changes right now. There have been a couple of bills that I'll draw your attention to. One that we are paying attention to in the special education realm is Senate Bill 819. This law was passed. We thought it may pass even as early as spring break last year and would have been in effect at the time. But we have been working on that. Essentially, the change here is that students on IEPs, there are times when a student will be given less than a full day of school, half day, for example. A parent now in Oregon has the right to overrule that and get a full day for their child. It is still possible to have a shorter day with a parent's consent, but this would allow the parent at any time, if they feel like that is not working, that they can simply say, I'm requesting a full day. And there's a time period of 5 days, I think, or 10 days where we must then make the change to a full schedule. It does come with direct supervisory requirements from the superintendent. So Krista McGuire, our special education director, and Chris and myself will be working on a calendar to make sure that that happens with the students that are in that position, a half day, and that if a request is made or if they remain on a half day. So, and we can give you a little bit more on that. Another one of interest, this bill was tracked by the Oregon School Boards Association, but it does apply across all government entities. It is House Bill 2805, and House Bill 2805 changes some requirements from the Ethics Commission, and as we report and work with the Ethics Commission as a government body. So it was less education specific, and so COSA did not follow it at the same level, but we are aware of that now. The first one is it will require sometime in your term to take training from the Ethics Commission. They will develop training for board members to take at some point during their time. And I don't know what format that would take, whether it be an online class or just something that you would watch and work with. And that is any government agency with a budget of $1 million or more. And we far surpass that, so we will qualify. The second part of that is pertains a little bit here because we've had a couple of ethics complaints, but the law now is changed to a grievance format to the board. So any entity which a person believes may have violated ethics rules, it must first start as a written grievance to that board. And then the board has 20 days to respond to the grievant and send the same response to the Ethics Commission, and that only after that has been done could someone then file a complaint with the Ethics Commission. And so, again, 2805, it has several things in the law, but I think this would, in large part, had this been available prior to the end of session, it would have allowed us to acknowledge, hey, there may have been an error here, to correct it, and then to move forward before it ended up going to the Ethics Commission. We have a couple of bargainings going on we are bargaining with both our certified, our teachers, as well as our classified. The classified are in a contract year, and so we will be looking here to sign off on an updated contract. I think the sessions have gone well. I know Brad Wilson has been in those sessions. Mrs. Knopfziger has as well. We're joined by Nancy Hungerford of the Hungerford Law Firm. We spent the other day working on language, and we're working on some of the things that we can do to improve economics in small ways and large. But I can't say we're done yet. We have another session on the 22nd where we will bargain yet again with them, hoping to get that cleared up. As it stands, they're without a contract, right? And so we need to put a new one in place. We have talked about a 3-year agreement. The teachers are within their contract at this time, but we have made some pretty good efforts there. I think the tone of the meetings has been really great. Probably the most important thing, we have proposed to them that we would move to a common schedule next year at West and South. And I know that's been an issue. And so I think they're willing to work, and we can't really do it right now. We have a new software coming in where we're still having to convert to that schedule. I think the idea that we would shift both schools at this point to a single schedule, even as we are in the process of moving into a new software system, that is a way too big a reach for us to do on the 14th of August. And so, but we will certainly move towards that next year. Once we know how to build the schedules in there, we can spend this coming year working on what the schedule will truly look like. And I'd rather have us really know what that is as we go forward into next year. But we have offered that we will do that. And so that will be something that will be coming up. The other big energy in the district right now is converting to the new software system. And there's scheduling to be done. We have, John Dilbone told me today, we have approximately 20 different programs in the district that are not our program, but that relate to it. And so, for example, from our system, a software called Traversa is used to plan our bus routes, but it's based off drawing information from our system. What was the other one that was big today? Parent Square, our communication system, same thing. Those things are we are going to have to adapt that to where it is drawing off of good information in our software. And so we need to take care of Mr. John Dilbone. He's working really hard right now because there are just a lot of cascading pieces of work that need to be done to bring us online. And so that has taken a lot of energy. I think a lot of people are having to work really hard to make that happen. John, Marcy Barnhart, our instruction curriculum confidential, just doing a great job there. That's all I have.
Questions? Yeah.
Yep.
Pete?
Now, one other thing, just informational more than anything, and we talked about this during pre-planning. Could you talk to the differences in bathrooms?
Oh, the gender? Good question. So this is not a new law, and so it didn't occur to me to include that tonight. But we will be sending out.
It goes into effect this fall, though.
Yes, and so the hard date for why can't I come up with it? Menstrual Dignity Act, the hard date was that we would have those installed by the June 30th. And so we, by and large, have accomplished the installation of those. And so as the school year begins, we are compliant with the law. This law was not passed this term, but was in fact passed 2 years ago in the general session with a phase-in that called for all school districts to be in compliance by this year. And so that is really the basis for that. We did spend funds to procure the materials. All of those were paid for through a grant from the Oregon Department of Education. So they did not give us a mandate there and then force us to pay for it out of our general fund. And so that is the situation as we move into this year. And we'll be sending out information to parents that that is the reality at this time.
Right. And just to be clear, so the requirement is all bathrooms have supplies.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Morris.
Do you have a question?
I do, Superintendent Gardner, fellow board members. The issue of high school schedules has been a sensitive one for a couple of years, and hope you're including in the process inputs from kids and families. And I have a bit of heartburn about the significance in the way of impacts, and that it's a substantial policy issue, and that be stuffed inside of
Bargaining.
a contract.
So we intend through this year to do exactly that. It has to be an exploration. We have to look and see what that would look like for both the staff and the kids and the community. I think it makes a better decision if we have a broader base.
So I then would assume that the approval of any contract would, that reference that would sync up with that we not be
Yes.
put in a spot that we're approving the contract in advance of that outreach, or that you have a tentative agreement that the public and the students and even
Like it's a done
teachers
deal.
involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
I'm concerned about the optics of that.
So what we would end up on, so the concept is to bring everybody together on one schedule. What that would look like is obviously going to need, like, I think it is a good thing that we get to congruent schedules, right? And so, but I also think it's important that kids be able to weigh in on that. And families and community.
Someone, do you have a question for the superintendent? Okay. All right. Superintendent goals?
Have 3 goals I'm proposing for you guys. In general, they are district instructional leadership supporting instruction, a balanced budget for 2024-25, that's next year, through improvement of fiscal processes. And then goal number 3 is community engagement to support community understanding and acceptance. So there are some things, the district has not in the past few years really looked at and focused on instruction, either instruction in the classroom or principals' roles in leading that. Develop or select a new evaluation rubric focused on teacher practices with the most impact on student achievement. Currently, we have a rubric with 31, I believe, different categories in it. I am certain that no one in the district could name them, right? And we want to make sure that we are doing the most important things. Number 2, clarify the relationship between the rubric and our current walkthrough rubrics. So in my time in the district, I haven't been out at schools as much as I want to be, but when I went out, I asked people, what are you doing? What are you watching? Instruction, how are you giving feedback to teachers? We have 20 schools. I saw 20 different methodologies for doing that. So we want to make sure that we have begun to coalesce them into the most important things that we look for in teaching. We want to prepare principals to implement higher rates of formal and informal observations with tools and skills supporting high-impact practices. I want to give Stafford Boyd a lot of credit here. He had put together a great exercise at the retreat, and he basically was able to show through data that principals in great buildings always spend more time in the classroom than principals who do not. Principals in their office generally tend to have buildings with less achievement, so we're going to start working on that. We're going to be this fall looking at how we do that, how they're using their time, how often they're getting in there. And number 4, make recommendations or implement an approach or system for supporting new teachers or veteran teachers in need of support. I would also include, after our behavior committee, we want to make sure that we have a program for our classified as well, how we train them as they come on. And we currently have a couple of mentors. I think that they are sometimes overwhelmed with the number of projects that they should be in, and there's just a limitations on bodies. So how do we create a system that can help build that? Goal number 2, sustainable budget. It's, and I think I've shared this with you a little bit anecdotally, but even as we finished the year and had an adopted budget, we still found things that we did not have really great control of. So we will continue to work this year towards making sure that we are fiscally performing really well. You guys are going to get the 12-month sheet that Jane put together last year about November. We'll continue to use that as the basic model. We'll be able to track expenses. We're really looking forward to just closing in on costs. We're going to closely monitor actual costs in departments and buildings to ensure that 23-24 expenditures align with the budget plan and federal and state requirements. I think one of the places that was noted this last year, it seemed like we were always spending at or near our full budget in personnel, and we're going to monitor that. We should truly be tracking 96-95% of that. We'll continue to look and see that we can do that. Last year, we were about 99 or higher. We're going to make sure all administrators with expenditure authority have clarity about their details and the larger purpose of the budget and their role in it. We're going to closely monitor enrollment and adjust expenditures to meet unanticipated enrollment changes as early as possible. I would say that October would be about the date when we know what our enrollment is this year, and we will be able to see whether that's up or down against the budget. That will be a huge signal to us as to what we need to do to move further into the year. And then with DLT large and cabinet, those are different groups that meet here in the district. We want to develop personnel and business systems that improve the budget process. An example, each year we have transfers. We have people who move out of title buildings into other buildings. We have special ed movement. We want to build a process for the budget beginning in about January, where all of those things are organized into a concurrent flow so that we can get down to an accurate staffing roster in each building by fund. Some buildings have SPED, they have title. Some people have people that are there in the SIA Act, all of those things. And we want to make sure that all of that is coherent so that we can be really clean going into the budget for next year. Let's go to number 3. And you guys remember this from the budget committee. We're really working on that 23-25 biennium. It is true that there is some risk of a recession that could happen. But if you take a look at the difference between the state actually is projected to collect $31 billion in this biennium. And you can see that we're working on $25 billion. The difference, what has gone away, is the kicker, right? And so the kicker, we believe, is probably that was an aberrationally high kicker. It's possible we could have another kicker if the economy was still better. But at the same time, we believe that this biennium will be followed by a biennium with more revenue. Just because $5.5 billion went away, even a reasonable economy will give us an increase off of that. Let's go to goal number 3. This is my catch-all. Oh, I'm sorry. This is just an example of some of the things we're working on. District P cards are charge cards. We want to make sure that those are more closely monitored. The exception time cards have not been an exception. They have been generally always done. Budget management, everybody can see their budgets. And they have a good understanding of how to go about expending those. Staffing accuracy, we are going through one more check right now to make sure that everybody's where they should be in the budget. Contract signing and tracking, we've talked about the fact that we discovered some contracts only at the end of June when we received bills off of contracts that were due, that had been signed. And then finally, grant approval. We want to make sure that when we enter into a grant, that we understand what it means for staffing and what funds we have to spend alongside it. So we are going to have to really work this year on just being resilient. Finally, goal number 3, community engagement, broadly is what it says. Through public presentations and sustained community engagement, develop a general awareness of the core value of acceptance, the need for all students to belong and achieve their potential, and the district's commitment to clearly communicating when staff teach topics deemed controversial. We propose focused listening sessions. It could be me, it could be you, it could be under the same format. We want to make sure that we invite parents and do not just take willing commentators. We want to hear from parents. And so whatever we would do, we would push to make sure that we send invitations specifically and look for that topic. Clear guidelines within the schools to address harassment effectively through state law and policy. That we will address bias incidents effectively through the new bias incident response protocol. That we will communicate our staff's plan to address controversial topics. We want to make sure we're incorporating restorative practices into discipline procedures, teaching staff why we are doing that, right? So it kind of bundles all of the work we're trying to do right now that I would say is meant to restore trust and build some general awareness in our staff, in the parents, and our administrators of how we're going to do each of those. So that is goal number 3. Clearly, some of that will be worked out with you guys. Those are my 3 goals. That's a proposal. We'll come back in August, and if you guys have any comments on that or how we might adjust them, happy to listen. I rest.
I had a question, unless anybody else has one, they want to go?
I have one, but you can go
Yeah,
first.
go ahead.
Well, I just, the first goal on instruction, I love that. That's gonna make the biggest difference for kids, but I just wanna remind you that 5 years and more ago, the district spent a lot of time, a lot of money on training, on highly effective instructional practice, on doing walkthroughs. Like we did all that work, it went away. But I don't think you need to reinvent the wheel, right? I think figure out what's out there already, and build off of that. I don't think you're starting from scratch on that one.
I agree.
Okay.
Andy, I had a couple of questions. One, is there any time frame where we're looking, rough time frames on setting up a focused meeting upon,
Any of those topics?
yeah, that we were talking about, so, and I don't even know that we have the format yet. We're going to try to get it done first part of school, right after school starts, or?
Well, we would hope that we could roll them out each separately, but with some time. The idea that we would then have 3 weeks with a meeting every Monday night for 3 weeks would probably be a little bit quick. We have already put together, and we did some work at the retreat on controversial topics. And so if we could move that one forward to where you guys could take a look at that at August as, for example, a first reading, but we could also end up with a listening session that might be devoted to that.
Okay.
Right, and then move as well on the bias incidents, right? And then as well, I think maybe, I don't know that the complaint policy would take that level of parent or community engagement, but that we would also be working on that as well.
Excellent. And the other thing, you mentioned the retreat. If you can kind of give us a overview of the retreat and how that went, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I really liked the retreat. I want to make sure that I give credit here to Stafford Boyd, Sue Luthra, and Kelsey Costalis for their work in planning the retreat. It was very engaging. We spent a lot of time. We worked on instruction, and I think I spoke about that already, that we began to analyze what we do every day now. But just most of the work at the retreat was working together to build a better understanding, to give suggestions for how we can do that, like any one of these projects, a little bit better. I felt like the group was very much in sync. We did have Isley and Ethan, who came as well with Kelsey, and they were a part of it. Those are our, what we would call our EDI team under Kelsey's direction. And I thought they gathered, they just mixed in right away, and it was great. And so I feel like the group as a whole looks focused and forward-thinking. Very pleased with that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might. I don't know if you can do it. Can you go back to goal number 2? So that's not the slide, I don't think, but you brought up grants.
2 slides ahead, yep.
I think it's particularly important that, first, I want to make sure that all grants come before the board and would be approved by the board.
So we have multiple levels of those. For example, the Albany Public School Foundation, I think, gives about $80,000 worth of grants, and we have 40,000 of that we set in there. I would not think that level, I think we'll have to come up with an expenditure level. Would that be fair? Or would you like to see all those? Because that's outside of us.
So from 30,000 feet, I think the trend, and Jane will correct me if I'm wrong, and I might be, but the district's labor costs are going to go up 5 to 7% a year based on influences that we don't control. The revenue rarely matches that, and so we're always challenged and stretched thin. Compounding that is that when the district receives grant funds and one of two things happen, included in the grant is a requirement to continue a position. Certainly I would want to see anything that has that requirement. And the other thing, just from a mechanics and a budgeting standpoint, that the basic default position of the district would be that when the grant money goes away, the position goes away. Mm-hmm. And that if such great things were done with those grant funds that were available, the continuing of that position come before the board, and included in that conversation is if you're going to do that, where are you going to come up with the money from? I guess what I would call the general fund to do that. Just a basic mechanics of budget and operations, I think, would help put us in a better financial position and help during the budget cycle as well.
Thank you.
Pete, go ahead.
I would agree with where Roger's going with that. And what we're talking to is the idea that during COVID, there was a whole bunch of grants that started programs, but then all that money went away, right? So now how do we come up with that money? So I think it's really important, and it sounds like you're in agreement, that if we take grants that commit us to do something, the board needs to understand that, because sooner or later, we're going to get to pay for that.
I don't disagree. I think you can have a practice that might be innovative, that we may receive a grant for 2 to 3 years, and it could grow to become something more integral than it would be at the outset, right? And so that would be something that we would certainly do. So it sounds like if it's personnel in it, then we're talking about something that's probably 50,000 or more that we would be sharing with you. Would that be fair?
Well, anything, generally, yes, but anything that would require ongoing spending after the grant runs out.
Yeah, and at least to me, if the grant money's out and we've decided we want to continue, then show me how we're getting that money. What are you canceling
Okay.
to get that?
That becomes a little difficult across
I understand.
125 million. But, so in other words, it's very difficult to say this is here, that went away, when there may be multiple things that we are doing there.
Sure.
But I understand the general concept that we want to make sure. I think one of the things we could do, Roger, would just be make sure that you guys in the budget process see who is in a grant and who isn't. And then we can watch that as we go forward.
I'd like to know before we've dug ourselves in that hole.
Okay. Well, wouldn't that meet your requirement, though? If, let's say there's a 3-year grant and there's someone in it, and each year annually, you can see that?
I think what he's getting at is in the past, that's not been happening, And so we're committed to this, and we don't know about it until, well, the grant money's gone, now we got to pay for it.
Okay. We can look at that.
If as a district, there's an approval of a grant or an acceptance of a grant, and that includes commitments beyond the period of the grant, I don't want to know about that during budget when it's created the problem. I want to know about it when we're approving that at the onset.
Yeah, I don't know that anything meets that requirement immediately. I think the grants that we have currently are going beyond that, beyond
Just,
the
okay,
budget.
we can,
Yeah.
I mean, the details will be the details, but conceptually,
Okay.
just trying to put ourselves in the strongest position possible as we head into new budgets.
Okay. I think I understand what you're asking for. We'll just remain in conversation about that. I rest.
Any further questions of Andy on this? All right, let's go to board member reports. Sean, you want to go first?
So I don't have anything super pressing. I did go to a meeting about a plan development. Just want to bring it to the board and the superintendent's attention. They're planning on putting a roughly 200 unit housing development south of Albany. They're looking at getting between 800 and 1,200 square foot houses for starting families. Looking in the mid 300s price range is what I was told. Who knows where that'll be in 2 years when they break ground on the actual houses, but just something to look forward to.
Did you say 800 to 1,200 square foot
Correct. That's what I was told.
or 300,000?
Correct. And that's with current housing prices projections.
Yeah.
But, so just to be aware that that's something that probably, I'd guess at least half of those are gonna have families. They didn't have numbers because they obviously haven't started selling them yet, but just to be aware that that's potential growth with potential problems, costs,
I've
whatever.
lived in duplexes bigger than that.
That was all I had.
Ryan, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I went to a conference over the weekend, learned a little bit about being a board member, about public meeting law, some ethics stuff, so that was good. One thing that you guys might be interested to know is that if you go into executive session under the wrong thing, you could potentially be fined, but if you do it under attorney advice, you can't be fined. So we should always make sure our attorney looks at our agenda for executive sessions before we do it, and that will protect us from that. Otherwise, I've got nothing else.
Thank you, Ray.
Roger, you want to go next?
Concerned about the heat. We got kids coming back to school for activities and from football to band to everything out there. And I see that coaches and administrators have thought this out, and I saw a kid walking down the street this morning with a football helmet at 6 a.m., which I think is a good sign. Just everybody be careful out there for the next few days.
Yeah, today was the first day back for all the sports. So, yeah. So first, I'm excited to hear that we're hopefully going to be able to get to a common schedule for the high schools. I think that'd be good for everybody. A couple other things. New school year is almost upon us. I think it's really important that schools and parents help our youth continue the climb out of the past few years out of COVID. Expectations need to be increased for our youth because they can handle it, and it's the best interest for their futures. I really thought we had a behavior work group. I really thought that went well, and I believe everyone involved learned a great deal. The district will follow up on this, I understand, bi-monthly, so we can continue to improve district behavior. I think that would be a great thing for us. We recognize that the district wants to improve parent, community, staff, and student customer service. With this intent in mind, the district will be coming out with timelines or flow charts to improve interactions with all stakeholders. I think that would help a lot of people understand how the systems work. Another thing I'd like to talk to, I'm a real big proponent of, is middle school sports or activities. This will be the third year where the district has put more money towards middle school activities and sports. I really want the increased opportunity to follow the increase in funding because I think middle school sports would be great for our community and for our youth.
Thank you. I just want to comment on our district. We've made some incredible gains since I first became a board member. There was a lot of changes that we felt needed to be made, and thanks to Andy Gardner and the administration, we're making those changes, and we're seeing positive results. We had a great meeting on behavior, which Pete talked about, where we learned an immense amount about the different ways that each middle school dealt with the same behavioral issues. And we were able to more closely realign how all the different schools do this and get the principals talking to each other in a more meaningful fashion so that they can work together and collaborate on how to deal with certain behaviors that have become an issue after the post-COVID pandemic. So I was really pleased to see that work go on and that we're going to be meeting on that. If it's not with the board members, at least the principals will be meeting every couple of months to be talking about this and how to move forward. And so it's just one example of the positive changes that we've been able to bring forward. Kind of on a more national note, I just wanted to give some heartfelt appreciation to the people of Maui. My wife and I spent a lot of time there. We've made many trips there and enjoy it. I had the honor of going to University of Hawaii for a year, and they're some of the warmest, nicest people you'll ever meet on the planet. They would literally give you the shirt off their back if you needed one. And so if we're in a position where you could donate a little bit of money to help them recover, it's because it's going to be a huge long time, as we know from our canyon that got completely burned down a couple years ago. We still got a big, long time to fix that. So just want to encourage people, if you can, to give a little bit to an organization and help out. And that's what I have on that. So now I think we have some consent agenda items. First one is personnel licensed.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve as presented.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is personnel classified.
Move to approve personnel classified as presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes from this July 24th, 23 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve those?
Move to
minutes?
approve as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Do we have any old business we want to bring back up? Reports. There doesn't seem to be any bond business. Any other business? And in a new world record, this meeting is adjourned.